Aquarius workshop, Let Go of Perfectionism. I start with a quote from Pathwork Lecture 234 with the title Perfection, Immortality, Omnipotence. And the quote is as follows: The humility of giving up perfectionism, the honesty to pay the price for developing slowly into a more genuinely perfect being are indispensable prerequisites, are, in fact, aspects of perfection already. It may seem paradoxical. By accepting humbly your limitations, your imperfect state, and looking at it creatively, constructively, and specifically, so as to understand and make connections, it is already a manifestation of the Godhead within. End of quote from Pathwork Lecture 234. The true self urges us to be spontaneous, to give our warm feelings generously, and to become a loving person. But we translate this inner message by wanting to be good and perfect. So consciously or unconsciously, there lives in every human being a cramping flow of I must be perfect. There exists in each of us a sensitive inner mechanism that regulates the psychic processes whereby true guilt through unloving, when that guilt is not recognized and processed, splits into a duality of apathetic, unjustified guilt on the one hand and hyperactive perfectionism on the other. The goal of perfectionism is to replace the love we freeze. But because of this perfectionist attitude, we focus even more on ourselves in an unhealthy way than on others. Thereby we damage our integrity. The feeling of confusion, fear, and guilt grows stronger, and the self-alienation and lack of self-respect increases. By gently getting to know the lower self with the help of the true self, we come into contact with the real guilt. Guilt is connected with the lower self, and that guilt is felt by the clear conscience of the true self. We can accept the lower self only when we completely let go of the false guilt that covers the real guilt, the perfectionism, and the tendency to judge or justify ourselves. We often hate ourselves for the wrong reason, putting ourselves down and hindering our growth and development. Then we allow ourselves to be guided by the moralizing superimposed conscious, which creates the false guilt, and as a ruthless, stern, cruel teacher, find every immature aspect unforgivable. Perfectionism causes us to force ourselves into false perfection, to be unfaithful to ourselves, and to withhold our love. This attitude precludes emotional development. In reality, we are happier to the extent that we accept imperfection and realize that perfectionism is a temporary distortion of giving the best of ourselves. In this workshop you will explore, with a loving curiosity based on 4 themes from the Pathwork Lectures, why we hold on to perfectionism. I start with the first theme. Perfectionism as pseudo-protection. We have a deep-rooted perfectionistic ideal of gaining love, admiration, and approval from others. to ward off a hostile outside world, to protect us from the destructive feelings of the lower self, to keep us from the vulnerable loving feelings of the true self, to protect ourselves from our own dismissive, moralizing and intolerant attitudes about our negative emotions. Self-confidence grows as we accept our humanity with all its shortcomings. The next quote stems from Pathwork Lecture 90. The stronger you hold on to perfectionistic ideals of yourself, the less willing you are to give them up. The more will you resist displaying your emotions where it would be constructive to do so. End of quote from Pathwork Lecture 90. The second theme. Perfectionism contains fear, pride, and self-will. Where there is perfectionism, there is also fear, pride, and self-will that cause us to look outside ourselves for the cause of our pain and therefore become alienated from ourselves. We cannot overcome these feelings unless we go through them and look for the cause of our suffering within ourselves. When we stop fighting our painful feelings, the pain ends and turns into pleasure. The next quote stems from Pathwork Lecture 160. When you face the fears squarely, face your pride squarely, which makes you so perfectionistic that you must fear to fall off the self-appointed pedestal. Many of the fears will dissolve when you are willing to give up your pride. Then you will see the unfairness that exists when you blame life or other people for what is really in yourself, no matter how imperfect and how wrong others also are. When you deny the cause of your suffering within and place it outside yourself, you always commit an unfairness. You are never in truth. It is always pride that makes facing the fear impossible. End of quote from Pathwork Lecture 160. The third theme. Perfectionism as an apparent need. If we have the apparent need to appear perfect without being perfect, then we are living in untruth. We live according to what others think of us and expect of us, and that causes a strong self-alienation. The moment we acknowledge our imperfection, this imperfection no longer causes negative energy. It only generates negative energy when we deny it. The next quote stems from Pathwork Q&A 192. My need to be perfect is an unrealistic need. I do not really need that. I do not need it because it is not true. I am not perfect. I am human, and as a human being, I incorporate the best but also the low qualities. And I want to get to know these low qualities without fear and without diminishing myself. The moment you can approach yourself in that way, you become strong. You become truly a force field of spiritual energies, which is not the case to the degree you need the illusion and you cultivate the false need of being perfect. End of quote from Pathwork Q&A 192. The fourth and last theme. Perfectionism through feelings of worthlessness. Only when we honestly and gently face and purify our pretenses can we begin to develop self-esteem as a counterpoint to the destructive belief in worthlessness. When we cut through the false self-esteem and perfectionism and create space to face the painful belief of worthlessness, then we can let go of self-doubt. The last quote stems from Pathwork Lecture 234. Another distortion in striving for perfection on the personality level is the fear of the inner imperfection, the hidden sense of worthlessness that is never squarely faced, comprehended, worked through in its details and small everyday manifestations. Instead, a mask of perfectionism is put on in order to prove to the world and the self that this feared and suspected worthlessness does not exist. End of quote from Pathwork Lecture 234. I wish you peace and all the best. Thank you.